The one place where anybody should get legal advice in Ireland is from a practicing qualified solicitor who's a member of the Law Society. That is, in accordance with the 1957 Solicitors Act, the only place where you are legally entitled to get legal advice. That doesn't mean that people don't give legal advice. It doesn't mean that people don't act in court for others. It just means that they shouldn't. So, anybody who's talking about mask laws or hate speech laws or any of that is only giving what is in effect a personal reflection. That's fair enough, but it just needs to be qualified as such that it's only a personal reflection. But I can speak from personal experience of Ireland's mask laws and Ireland's hate speech laws to a certain lesser extent. I haven't been prosecuted under either of those. If an effort was made to prosecute me under either of those, I would defend it fully. Nobody has ever sued me for defamation either. Just as an aside, there is an article online at the moment which refers to Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp recently took a defamation action against The Sun newspaper and he lost it. I read the ruling of it. I think it's a disgrace. And a website online, one of these kind of celeb news things, talked about the guilty verdict against Johnny Depp. There's no guilty verdict and he should sue them. He'd have a stronger case there. A lot of people who don't understand the law think that Johnny Depp was on trial. He wasn't. He was the plaintiff and he was suing a newspaper in a civil case in London. This is alarming because people's rights to protect their good name through defamation actions and defamation laws are being stolen from them. They're certainly being stolen from them here in Ireland. Take a look around and see how many people have won a defamation lawsuit in Ireland in the past 5 years. Look deeper. Johnny Depp was never convicted of wife beating. He still hasn't been convicted of wife beating. Johnny Depp, therefore, is an innocent man. In relation to his libel action against The Sun, I gather, I'm not sure, but I gather that he's appealing that, and he most certainly should. He most certainly should. Absolutely he should. And there's been a lot of scummy gaslighting going on about Johnny Depp since that particular verdict. But what I saw online today was outrageous. It was plainly and indefensibly defamatory of Johnny Depp. He was not found guilty. To refer to the verdict in his libel action against The Sun as a guilty verdict is a libel of Johnny Depp. His solicitors know where I am. If they want to contact me, I can help them with that, and I don't joke about that either. Men who are up against toxic women, and Amber Heard can sue me for the next thing. She's a toxic woman, yes, absolutely. Are now facing, particularly heterosexual men, particularly white men, are facing an ever-increasingly steep slope to just vindicate their good name. I have the utmost personal sympathy for Johnny Depp and what he's been through with that libel action, and it's not over, and he's right to appeal. Let's get back to the mask laws in Ireland. The mask laws in Ireland were brought in by a statutory instrument. That's secondary legislation, which is ostensibly drafted by the minister and signed. You know, that's assuming that the minister would have the literacy skills to do that. Whatever about Stephen Donnelly, Simon Harris certainly wouldn't have. That doesn't matter to them because they've the mainstream media backing them up. Simon Harris earlier this year referred to COVID-19 as being the 19th such disease in a set of 18 preceding, whereas in fact that simpleton wasn't aware and hadn't done his homework to realise that it was called COVID-19 because that was the year in which it was identified as a particular viral strain. This at the time was our Minister for Health. He's now our Minister for Education. This is because people vote for them. It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. Through that one, and then Harris then made light of it. I made a boo-boo, he said. And, of course, RTE and the Irish Times gave him a complete free pass and congratulated him and carried on with their Simon is playing a blinder nonsense. Through that one slip of his, Harris proved himself unfit for any position of responsibility whatsoever. He doesn't do the research pertaining to his job, and then he makes light of it when he's caught out. But it is the mainstream media who are not pursuing this lying, bullying, offensive imbecile for his unsuitability for any office or responsibility whatsoever. By that I mean cleaning toilets, let alone being Minister for Health, or as he is now, Minister for Education. This, though, does indicate the extent to which democratic politics in our republic, that is Ireland, have been degraded to a point where we have these utterly unsuitable individuals taking these roles. It doesn't matter because the decisions are being made elsewhere. Anyway, the mask laws. I haven't worn a mask once, except for photo shoots. I put on a leather mask, just for the crack. I tried wearing that leather mask in the shops once, and I only was able to last 3 minutes. Then I just said to them, I'm having difficulty breathing. Oh, that's okay, take it off. That leads on to the issue of the mask laws. If you have difficulty breathing, you don't have to wear a mask. If you suffer from extreme distress, you don't have to wear a mask. I haven't once got any discourtesy or trouble from anybody working in a shop. On occasions I've been asked. I went into Power City before Christmas, just a few days before Christmas, to buy something, and I was asked why I was not wearing a mask. I said I have an exemption. They said that's okay. End of story. So we have to look at people who've been ostensibly, according to our the lying bullies in our mainstream media, who've been convicted for not wearing a mask. Nobody's been convicted for simply not wearing a mask. Andy Heisman was convicted on 2 charges. He was convicted on a public order offence and refusing to identify himself to a Garda. Those are on their own merits questionable. But he put up his own defence, and, I've represented myself sometimes successfully in court. That doesn't mean necessarily that he would be able to do that. Then the question arises, and I won't get into it now, why he didn't get legal aid. Or even try and get just an ordinary, everyday solicitor just to put up his defence for him. But there you go. So Andy Heisman was not convicted for not wearing a mask. He was convicted, and John Waters had a good article about this. He was convicted on 2 much older offences, public order and refusing to identify to a Garda. Now, Ireland has brought in hate speech laws. We'll talk about that in a sec, because they're similar to the mask laws. Getting back to the mask thing, though, my own experience is if you're courteous and calm to people, if you've notified managements in advance by email and saying, I wish to invoke my exemptions under difficulty breathing and extreme distress, email them in advance. Every single place I've done that to has replied courteously and said to me, that's fine, and thank you for notifying us in advance. End of story. Nothing more to say. And just before Christmas, on the 13th of December, a civilian in a supermarket near me called the Gardaí because I was not wearing a mask. He complained to the management of the shop, and they said to him I'd been given permission not to wear a mask. He then complained against them to the Gardaí. The Gardaí cautioned him for wasting their time and escorted him off the premises, and then came back and told me I'd nothing to answer. This is how you do it. This is the right way to do it. This is the right way to do it. Don't go in looking for fights with people working in shops. That's the wrong way to do it. Don't go live streaming. Although I can't live stream because I'm on so many goddamn Facebook bans. I'd have better chance with Telegram or a Magic Lantern to get anything out live now these days. But sure, it's a sign of my success, I suppose, that they're closing me down. But this live streaming in supermarkets, this going in with legal declarations, all the rest of it, is just looking for trouble. It's just looking for trouble. Well, here's the oldest thing in life. You go looking for trouble, you'll get it. Never known to fail. You go looking for trouble, you'll get it. Whereas if you set out not looking for trouble, usually, not always, but usually you won't get trouble. The people who are working in and running supermarkets, electronic goods shops, those kind of places, generally are not looking for trouble, particularly with the big chains. Tesco, Power City, SuperValu, they're not looking for trouble. So if you don't go in, you want to buy your groceries, you buy your orange juice, your eggs, your bacon, your milk, you want to buy those kind of things and you're not looking for trouble, then they're not going to give it to you. But the courtesy is important to notify them in advance that you are claiming those 2 particular exemptions. Extreme distress and difficulty breathing. I claim them in good faith. Because when I did try wearing that mask, I did have difficulty breathing, which would then lead very quickly, concomitantly, to extreme distress. So that's not rubbish, and I'm not bluffing when I say that. I'm not bluffing when I say that. It has been said that people are required to provide medical proof if they want to use public transport without a mask. But then, how's that enforceable? That's questionable. That is questionable. How can, Dublin Bus or Bus Éireann or private coach company staff or Irish Rail staff demand people's medical records? So I've used the trains, I've used the buses without wearing a mask. Nobody said anything. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And this is the central clue. This is the central clue to the fact that the mask laws are a bluff. Because, you know, when the mask laws came out and then it was spotted that there were these two exemptions, extreme distress and difficulty breathing, Ranelagh erupted in jazz hands. Ranelagh erupted in jazz hands, as did their friends in Clontarf, Malahide and Montagnot. You see, I'm not just keeping Dublin in the pale here. I have in the loop here. I have to move beyond the pale to Cork. They erupted in jazz hands, and of course, the letters went to the Irish Times. We have to do something about this. This is a loophole. What do we do with people who aren't complying? Now, the government reads the Irish Times letters page. That was all in August. Here we are at the end of December. Nothing happened. Figure it out. So, this is, you know, it's a psyop, this mask thing. It's just a psyop. It's just, you know, but if you're looking for trouble, you'll get it. And if you want to not wear a mask in the shops, just go in. When you go in the door of the shop and they say to you, why you're not wearing a mask, say I have an exemption. Nobody's argued with me beyond that particular point. Nobody has argued with me. Not since August. I've just say I'm an exemption. They don't get into it. They're not interested. They don't care. Let's talk now about the hate speech laws. This is Fine Gael at its most depraved, because I saw an article today about a woman whose daughter committed suicide, ostensibly arising from bullying and threats that she got both online and by email, probably by text or by phone. That is a disgraceful thing to have happened to that young woman. That is completely indefensible. I deeply sympathise with her bereaved family in their loss. Suicide is a tragedy always. It's not something that can ever be trivialised, and it's not something that the victims, that is the bereaved family members and loved ones and friends, ever recover from. It is an appalling, appalling curse to happen to any family or to any loved ones or any group of friends when one of their own kills themselves. It's off the scale of grief and horror and trauma for all of those people who are left behind. That is why the cynical exploitation of a suicide as a Trojan horse to push through cynical laws designed really to suppress political dissent is such an evil thing. But that is Fine Gael. Fine Gael are evil. And there has been a hardcore of us calling them out on that for a long, long time. In relation to harassing somebody, online or elsewhere. Please remember that there is Section 10 of the 1997 Non-Fatal Offences Against the Person Act, or Offences Against the State Act. I'm talking off the top of my head here, I don't have it to hand, but I know it's Section 10 of the 1997 Non-Fatal Offences Act. I think it's against the state. In fact, you can be fairly sure of that. That long-established legislation criminalises bullying, including bullying electronically, by phone or other means. That legislation has been used repeatedly to convict people who have been harassing others, including online. But the problem now with this new legislation is that it's very, very broad and it doesn't actually define what the offence could be. Problem for the state with that is sooner or later, in their arrogance and psychosis, they will trip up against somebody who will defend it fully. So, what's similar to the mask thing, I predict, is that they will continue to use Section 10 of the 1997 Act, but they will use this new hate legislation really as a concomitant, shall we say, decoration to it, or, you know, an addition to it. What happened with Andy Heisman was the liars in the mainstream media said that he'd been convicted for not wearing a mask. The judge in the case said that his not wearing a mask was a consideration. That is a specific term used in convictions in the summary courts, the district court and sometimes the circuit court, to say that the court noted that he did not wear a mask. But he was not charged under the mask laws. He wasn't charged. He was charged under those two pieces of statute that I mentioned earlier. And my prediction is that in order to convict people in relation to what could be construed as online bullying or abuse or that kind of thing, that they will use the 1997 Act, Section 10 of the 1997 Act, or other sections of that particular Act. Because that's much less open to challenge, it's much less loosely and ambiguously written than these new hate laws. So what have they got in common with the mass thing? They're done to frighten people. They're done to frighten people. What I find so wicked and immoral about the hate speech laws is that Fine Gael and their friends in the mainstream media are cynically exploiting the grief and trauma of a family whose member committed suicide as a Trojan horse to justify these laws. That is unpardonable. That is a deep evil on the part of these people, but they are deeply evil, as are their cheerleaders in the mainstream media. It is an evil to do that, to cynically exploit somebody who committed suicide and their bereaved relatives afterwards. That is evil. But we are dealing with evil now at the moment. So who will be likely to be prosecuted under these new hate laws? I think that they will be the people who are the equivalent somewhat of anti-Heisman. They'll be people, first of all, if you are to dox somebody, then that would be, that is an abuse to dox somebody. I've doxed myself. I've put my address online. I put my email address online. My phone number, my public line number is available in the phone book. So, you know, and this gets down to real life. If people want to find me, they will. I'm not going to live in fear of people. If they want to find me, they know where I am. So I've doxed myself already. You can find my address, Seagrove 9 Claremont Road, Hote, Dublin, D13, Hotel Foxtrot 21. My public line is 018320941. My email address is christian2013morris@gmail.com or christianmorristv@gmail.com. There you go. I've doxed myself. Hey, but the threatening abuse that can happen online is, for example, to identify somebody and to say that they're going to be targeted to be killed or to be assaulted, or that their home is going to be attacked. That is abuse. Nobody should have to put up with that. I don't. I've never put up with that. But I've sued people under our civil defamation laws for that. But then if you look closer at our defamation laws, since 2009, they've been very, very strictly curtailed. In relation to satire, well, Ireland doesn't have satire. We do to an extent out in alternative media, for what it's worth. But, there's no satire in RTE or Virgin or any of the radio stations. That's because they're all in the same club. And bear in mind that those people in RTE who had their little hoolie for a retiring colleague, a charge hand, they broke all the COVID-19 laws and they face no consequences for it. And Micheál Martin, who's presently just, usurping the role of Taoiseach at the moment with the permission of Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin said he was cool about it. So bear that in mind. Always bear that in mind. And you can claim that precedent, or you can at least try and claim it if you're being prosecuted for not wearing a mask or such like. But we have the right to challenge authority. And Irish people, Thomas Sheridan has spoken about this. Different countries have different kind of hang-ups. In the UK, the first hang-up is the NHS, and in many parts of England, less so in Scotland and Wales, they still have a hang-up about adoring the royal family. In Ireland, we have a hang-up about adoring civil servants like Tony Holohan, that monster, Tony Holohan, and cretins like Simon Harris, psychopaths like Varadkar, Owen Murphy, those kind of things. They're not human. And we need to stop being polite to politicians and civil servants. That doesn't mean that we're abusive to them. It doesn't mean that we put their home addresses, home phone numbers, details of their wives and children, husbands and children, that kind of thing online. We don't. But what we do is we focus on them themselves in their capacity as a politician or a civil servant. So, for example, if you look at the memes I put up about Simon Harris, this is a Minister for Health who can't control his underpants. And this is a Minister for Education who wasn't able to get beyond first year in some kind of higher education course. Those pertain to him in his capacity as a Minister for, respectively, Health and Education. There's nothing that will contravene the hate speech laws in that. Earlier this year, Simon Harris lied about COVID-19, and then he said, I done a boo-boo, ha ha ha. And of course, all the mainstream media cheered him on. Simon is playing in blinder and all the rest of that. Well, that's not going to be forgotten, Minister. That's not going to be forgotten. What this was proof of is, first of all, that he's lazy, secondly, that he's incompetent, and thirdly, that he's a liar. He's an objectionable individual, Simon Harris is, but he's not as objectionable as the people who continued to vote for him, despite all the evidence of his incompetence and unsuitability for office. Because let's not forget that children's hospital, because Simon wanted it in an oval shape. It's in the wrong part of Dublin, it's not built to spec, and it went 1,000% over the cost of building. Who has suffered for that? Nobody. Micheál Martin, when he became Taoiseach, he took that on. I said before that he should have moved to defund RTE after the charge hand scandal. He didn't, because he's weak and he's part of the system. In relation to the Children's Hospital, his first move when he became Taoiseach would have been to say it publicly, and then let the consequences follow. Do what Trump does. Trump says things and then he allows the statute to follow him. And he's right. Trump knows what he's doing. The first thing Martin should have said was, Children's Hospital has been scrapped. Now we're going to go after the waste of money and find out who wasted all those taxpayers' money. Micheál Martin is the wicker man. He has taken on a cursed role, king for a day, a fool who chose it of his own free will to be king for a day. And he's going to pay the price. But getting back now to those two pieces of statute, I can't give you legal advice. I'm not a solicitor. Even if I was a solicitor, I couldn't give legal advice online. You'd have to have a consultation with me in which all of these things would be written down and recorded. That's the right way for things to be, by the way. But just speaking personally in relation to those two pieces of statute, don't worry about them. Stay calm, stay courteous, don't get abusive. If you feel that you're in a threatening situation, in all honesty, there's no harm in making a video recording that you do not live stream, but that you can retain in case it goes to court. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, and it's nothing illegal about that in a public area to make a video recording or take photographs. Whatever some incompetent guard might say to you, or whatever somebody else might say to you, you're actually entitled to make a video recording for your own safety. Those video recordings that people make, and I'm not going to say anything about any cases of mine, can sometimes be very useful. But live streaming is not acceptable because it intimidates people. It intimidates people. They don't like being live streamed. I don't blame them. They have a right not to be live streamed. A moral right, I would say. Whether it's a legal one or not, I'd say they have a moral right not to be live streamed. But they don't have a moral right not to be videoed onto the hard drive of your iPhone or your Android or whatever. Wear a body cam. No law against that. But, you know, you retain that and you don't publish it online. But that's all. Non-essential stores like BT2, Brown Thomas 2, is demanding that people who come to their premises show proof, medical proof of an exemption. You have a remedy to that. Don't go.